Graham Lineham was once one of the most celebrated members of Britain's famously liberal, uber politically correct comedy community.
Graham Linehan. Graham Linehan, he's, the creator of like some of the best loved sitcoms, TV shows in the UK. Father Ted is a real classic. Black Books, like the IT Crowd. But he's quite, but was, at least he was quite beloved over there. And the police state that is the UK, or should I say Airstrip 1, the police state that is Airstrip 1 has arrested him, of course, for saying things that they didn't like on the internet. The Glitter update: I just got arrested again. I arrived back in London to discover the UK is still a police state run by trans activists. So he moved to the United States, where he's actually working on a new show with Rob Schneider's production company, I believe. And I guess he had to go back and visit, and they arrested him when he got off the plane. So let's actually take a look at this. I mean, this is truly dystopia now, right? This has truly become dystopian. I just got arrested again. Graham Lineham. There he is. He had to go to the hospital. So they took him to jail and made him, the stress of it ended up sending him to hospital because I guess they assumed he was having a heart attack or something, which is quite understandable. You're just getting off a plane and you're not expecting to be arrested. Calvin Robinson. You may have seen him on Lotus Eaters if you watch that. Graham Linehan traveled to the UK from Arizona and was arrested at the airport by 5 armed police officers for a couple of posts on X. Is he a terrorist? Did he attempt to take over the plane? No, he sent 3 naughty tweets. His bail conditions dictate he is banned from X. Let's see if we can find these actual tweets. So here's a couple of tweets from him. Graham Linehan: if a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. That's a joke. That's not a call to violence. It's clearly a joke. Because the balls thing, right? The balls... man in a female-only space pretending to be a woman. So this is what's gotten him in trouble, is that he's refused to buy into the trans fantasy world, the gender theory, gender ideology fantasy world. So he's refusing to pretend to believe things that he knows aren't true. He's refusing to pretend to believe that men can become women or women can become men. He's an example of an old school liberal who just refused to give up dominion over his own conscience. Again, is this something that would demand, in any sane world, is this something that would demand 5 armed officers to arrest him? I mean, the UK's got problems. They got terrorism problems there. They got grooming gang problems there. They got major crime problems of every kind. Is this really the best use of resources? Well, if the goal is not to have a fair rule of law society, if the goal is for an anarcho tyranny with just arbitrary use of government power and government violence, well, then that makes sense, right? If the truth doesn't matter anymore, if the only thing that matters is power, then it makes sense. They should just change all the maps, just call it Airstrip 1 from now on. And of course, there's total hypocrisy. It's totally two-tiered. The law applies to some people. It doesn't apply to other. It's an arbitrary application of the law based on politics. Graham Linehan should have joked about pushing people under a train, like the UK, like the UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting. Let's see. There would be nothing natural about Jan Moore's, I don't know who that is, Jan Moore's death if I shoved the bigoted old bag under a train. That's the health secretary. Not arrested for some reason. Here we go. Look at this. Talking about in 3 different... I mean, this is unbelievable. But this is tyranny, right? This is the arbitrary application. This is the arbitrary application of power, of the state's monopoly of violence. Let's see. Glitter update. So this is what he wrote. This is what Graham Linehan wrote. At Heathrow Police Station, my belt bag and devices were confiscated. Then I was shown into a small green tiled cell with a bunk, a silver toilet in the corner, and a message from Crime Stoppers on the ceiling next to a concave mirror that was presumably there to make you reflect on your life choices. In this case, his life choices to not betray his own conscience. By some miracle, probably because I hadn't slept on the flight, I managed to doze off after the premier economy seat in which I just spent 10 hours. It was actually a relief to stretch out. That passed the time, though I kept waking up wondering if it was all actually happening. And does have to be, it must have been horrifically surreal. Later, during the interview itself, the tone shifted. The officer conducting it asked about each of the terrible tweets in turn, with the sort of earnest intensity usually reserved for discussing something serious like, oh, I don't know, crime. I explained that the punch tweet was a serious point made with a joke. Men who enter women's spaces are abusers, and they need to be challenged every time. The punch in the bollocks bit was about the height difference between men and women. The bollocks being closer to punch level for a woman defending her rights, and certainly not a call to violence. Well, it was clearly a joke, and also just simply the fact that if it were a real woman, you wouldn't be able to punch her in the balls. He mentioned trans people. I asked him what he meant by the phrase. People who feel their gender is different than what was assigned at birth. I said, assigned at birth? Our sex isn't assigned. He called it semantics. I told him he was using activist language. The damage Stonewall has done to the UK police force will take years to mend. This is all just insanity. It's obviously political. Obviously. Neil O'Brien says Britain is now a total laughingstock, but it's actually a terrifying laughingstock. A country where we arrest the authors of light comedies and interrogate them about their tweets. It would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. It is genuine. I find it terrifying. I find it. This is coming. If it's allowed, this is coming everywhere. This is the goal. This is Britain racing towards a Chinese neo-fascist totalitarian model. That's what's going on here. It's nothing else, and everybody in the UK should be terrified. This is April 16th, 2023. So they've been after him for years, but let's watch this.
Graham Lineham was once one of the most celebrated members of Britain's famously liberal, uber politically correct comedy community. A legend at the left-wing Channel 4, he was beloved. As a modern-day creative messiah, the brains behind all-time great comedies, Father Ted, The IT Crowd, and actually one of my personal favourites, Black Books. That was until he dared to express a view. Until just a few years ago, by the way, a view accepted as an established fact. It's a view about the existence of biological sex and how it's pretty unwise to allow anyone with a penis into women's only spaces.
Can't say anything. They've given women no room in which they can maneuver and argue for their rights.
The gender movement is, at its heart, it's a middle-class movement. They've all got kids who wear some eyeshadow, decide they're trans, and the parents are kind of circling the wagons around them rather than thinking it through.
There's no more homophobic statement than trans women are women. Because when you say that trans women are women, you are saying that they are women in the literal meaning of the word. That means that if a lesbian does not want to go out with a male-bodied person who identifies as trans, they are automatically considered a bigot.
Does that sound like a threat to national security? Does that sound like a threat to the public? Or just like, a middle-aged man speaking just common sense, just widely held beliefs? Does that seem like somebody who needs to be arrested? No. Does that seem like somebody that this is required for? No. No, that's just a normal person expressing widely held views, more widely held than the views of the radical activists, or much more widely held views. So this is the state of the UK, and it's genuinely sad and tragic to see this happening to a once great country, a once great empire. It's all a warning to the public. No, this is happening. What's happening around you, what you can see with your own eyes and ears, what you know is wrong, it's happening and it's going to keep happening, and there's nothing you can do. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Please like, share, and subscribe. Subscribing really helps me out. I thank you for that. I will see you next time.